Hello and welcome back to the worst Warmachine channel on the internet. I'm Dorian, and it's time for another Warmachine Weekly. Now, this is the topic that comes to you as my patrons voted on, and what it's going to be all about is my top 5 models or units that I want to see updated when we get this big update here on the 25th. Now, as we go into this, I have to very much preface the idea that this is my opinion and my feelings. Realize that I am really a Cygnar Mercenary Infernals Now player, although I've played some other factions in the past, and that my choices are going to be highly biased because of what player I am. So this is not what things out there are the most deserving of it, you know, and of course you could get into meme things like Black Ivan and all that other stuff, but this is myself. This is if I was, you know, if I had Faye under the gun and I'm like, fix these things, these are the things that I would really want to see improved. And in fact, my first one coming out here will be an honorable mention that is none of those factions, but I really want to touch on, which is the Khador Cossite woodsman. These have been awful forever. I don't know if they were good in Mark 1. I didn't play in Mark 1, but ever since I started playing in pretty early Mark 2, they have always been trash. There has been some play where like, oh, I guess they could come on and maybe do this harassing, but like literally any other ambushing thing is just vastly superior to it. So in a way, I want them to be improved, because if they aren't, people are going to say like, Faye, if you can't even deal with the Cossite woodsman, this was a massive failure. But also in a way, I kind of want these Cossites to stay bad just for the meme. Now, as I go through these choices, I'm not just going to say them and my reasons why. I'm also going to say the way that I'd fix them to see if that's actually the way that Faye does them as well. And I have a little bit of a cheaty knowledge, because since Faye was on the meta, and if you haven't seen that podcast, check it out, because she talks about a lot of things about what she changed and what her reasoning was. But she did say on there that for the most part, she tried changing just the points and stuff like that. She didn't so much go into like the rules. She only changed stuff that was on like the front of the card. So to me, that means that probably all they did with Cossites is like reduce them by like 2 points. Let's say that they're going to reduce them by 2 points for the unit, which would make them like pretty cheap and pretty easy just to throw in there. I think that if I was doing this, I want them to be a little bit more deadly. So I would drop them a point and give them prey. I think that would be great. This would be then a very interesting unit that you have to very much worry about. Again, they're not going to dominate because you're always going to know what they're hunting for, right? Normally with ambushers, are they going to go on this side or this side? They're probably going after the prey target, right? So that kind of decreases that power by giving you that knowledge, but that's the way that I would go with the Cossite woodsman, and I think that would probably be enough, but I'm interested to see what Faye does. All right. We're going to jump into these now. I got 5 of these. We're going to start at number 5 and work our way up to the one that I really want to be changed the most. And to me, the number 5 one I have here is Brickhouse. Now, you probably might be kind of wondering, like, which one is Brickhouse? Is that the one that's like the big trench or bunker? No, that's Blockhouse. Brickhouse is the character jack that comes from Beth Maddox. And I always wanted Beth to be good, and they've made her very competitive now, so that's not a problem, but her character jack is just kind of awful. I mean, it does have carapace, so that's awesome. It has reach, so that's awesome. It has this ability where if you get things in range, they can't run away. The problem is that it's just so damn slow. It's hard to even make that be a thing. In a lot of cases, if you're locking them down, they're just smashing you back. A lot of things being taken nowadays now actually does have reach. And so that is going to be a big problem there. And also, it's just a lot of points. So it's just hard to make this thing work. So here's this model that I guess as well, like kind of looks weird, right? Like the big hand and the stop sign and all that type of stuff that I want to be good because it's janky and it's interesting. And it's for a caster that I also want to be good, the character jack. But at the same time, it's just too many points. And I think that's really all it comes down to. I don't think it needs really a change in its rules or anything like that. If it was just cheaper, it would be more competitive. And so to me, I think you could easily drop it by 2 points, and that's probably it. And then that's probably already there, making it fairly competitive. It might even go further. They're dropping a lot of jacks down, but I think at 2 points minimum, that's probably all it needs. And then you're going to start seeing it, especially with Beth and Maddox again. All right, going to number 4, the one that I want to be seeing change the most is going to be the Trencher chain gun. This is my example. It's always the one when I talk about bad models, I always bring it up here. I mean, again, I didn't play Mark 1, but in Mark 2, it was bad, but sometimes playable-ish because there was enough infantry. Because there was so much infantry out there in Mark II, sometimes putting down this template, if you had it in combination with other things, might be playable, but honestly, you almost never saw it back then, and now you definitely don't see it. And the reason why this one means so much to me is that it looks like it should be so cool, right? Whenever you see movies where there's like a Gatling gun, it's like shooting things down, you know, like this thing should be there and it should be like mowing down infantry. But it never does that, right? If it's shooting at infantry, it's not really doing much. I mean, it probably has to move up to even get into range. And then if it's putting down this covering fire, I mean, like things just don't go into it. And so like, imagine if in the movies, that's what the Gatling guns did. Don't shoot at them, just shoot the floor in front of them. And then like the opposing army's just like, runs around it, right? Like this is not the cinematic thing that you would expect from the movies. So I think that for what they should be doing for this thing here is I think they should actually be increasing its range. I think the range is one of the biggest issues here. If you took it from its range of 10 right now and made it more like something like 14, for starters, you could actually just start shooting infantry, shooting them down like it's actually supposed to be. And then you have a lot more options of, if you need to, putting that covering fire in a very annoying spot. Whereas that 10 inches, like they're in your face, like they're pretty much right there. It's not really going to be doing a lot. And again, it's only really good against infantry. And I don't think I'd go crazy, right? I wouldn't give it like armor piercing, anything like that. Maybe you can make it POW 12. Maybe it might be already. I don't know. Again, it's not played ever, but I think just that, if you just made it so it was range 14, maybe even reduce it by a point as well, then that's something you would see being played a lot more. Yeah, it'd probably have to be range 14 and down a point to be sneaking in there. But I think that's what I would be doing with that. So you're actually shooting enemy infantry instead of just shooting the floor. All right, going on to number 3 is going to be the Siege Crawler. Here it is up here. The battle engine for the mercenaries that you pretty much never see. This thing, when I was playing Signar, and I was like, wow, I got the Storm Strider, stomp, 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 big battle engine, zap, 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 doing awesome things. It was like, wow, that's amazing. And then they came out with the mercenary one. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be so cool. And it was not so cool. So for those who don't know what that currently does, it does this thing where like it brings back your Rulik dwarf models, so that can be okay-ish. It has like 2 big AoEs which have stagger, but critical stagger, and so it also has like 1 little rifle shot just for fun. But so if you run it with something like Osram and you're like swapping back and forth to try and get the fire for effect, then it's gets into like, goes from trash to janky, because you're still at the point where like you could just be putting this onto the mortars and just getting like guaranteed big damage. On this thing here, you're pretty much going up and really hoping that you can be getting like this big huge crit effect, and sometimes they happen and sometimes they don't. And even when you get this critical stagger, like sometimes it still just doesn't do anything because they can just shake it or whatever. So it really is kind of piss poor. Now, to me, the fix for this one, I don't think the points need to be going down. I think the points is okay. I would give it the same rule that you have there now on the Tridents and also on the Railless Interceptor, and just give it one focus token, basically one power token every single turn. And then basically it can be using that to be boosting and trying to make sure it actually hits, or it gives you a better chance of actually trying to go there and getting that crit effect that you're trying to get. And I kind of feel like that alone might be enough so that regular play, it's all right. And then now with Osram, where you have like, okay, you can boost for that. You get the extra one from the, I think those are both boost. Maybe that won't work. Anyway, like it takes it out of at least trash normally to being okay normally, and then even better when you're doing with something like awesome, right? I guess, for that one, fire effect on the first shot, and then you could boost on the second shot. There we go. So it all works out, gets better, and it should be better. It's a battle engine. All these other battle engines are so cool, and this one is just, it's so garbage. Usually when you see people playing with it, it doesn't even go for the stagger, right? Like that is just such a let's hope that what they actually do is like pop Osram's feet, go for higher speed and armor, and just run them into the enemy and just be like, I'm going to block you with these high armor, lots of boxes, and hope that then I can set you up for a big alpha after. And that's just not what you want these cool things to be doing. So that's what I do with them. Just one power token every single turn. Okay, going on to number 2 is kind of my own thing, but also it's really Khador, and this is going to be the Kiasi Assassins. Now, when I got into the game, Kiasi Assassins were amazing, and they were amazing for a couple of reasons. One, because you could put iron flesh on them, and at the time iron flesh actually increased their defense, so they were just so hard to hit, plus their defense was higher before as well. And on top of that, their mini feat was not just, ooh, we can stab you in the back. It was acrobatics. So they're charging through the lines and hitting whatever they want. And with gang, like they're like easily killing casters and stuff like this. Like you'd basically be going up with iron flesh and then switch it up to some sort of like fury or something, and they're just going in like killing your caster. They were so cool, and they should be, right? Like they're the ninjas of this actual game right now, and now they're just like, they went down in defense. Their mini feat is like now they get backstab, which really means like you like walk through the lines, turn around, and then stab them in the back. And so like the extra damage dice you're getting for backstab, you're losing because you're not charging, and it just doesn't really work. Like maybe you can be in like this Christmas land where you can like get to back arcs and stuff and get everything. It just really doesn't happen, because whereas before you'd have all the things you need to make sure like, okay, you come into me, and thanks to iron flesh and my standard high defense, you're not hitting me, and now I can do whatever I want. Now, defense 13 going up to 15. Let's be honest, this is kind of pitiful, and a lot of things are going to be killing that pretty easily. So I want to see them get them better. Now, what I would do with these is, again, I feel the points could stay the same. Again, infantry is kind of bad, so maybe you could argue for the points going down 1. But for me, defense should go back up. These are the ninjas. These are the things that should have high defense. So let's move those to 14 plus the duelist on top of that. And let's go back to that old mini feat where we get acrobatics. I don't really care about backstab. That's a weird thing that's very hard to try and set this up. Let's go for that acrobatics. That's a lot more meaningful to actually go through the lines, get to the support, kill whatever you need. That's way more important. Hell, keep both. Give them backstab all the time, and then give this as the mini feat. And I think that at that point, like if you gave them those 3 things, the higher defense, the mini feat gives acrobatics, and backstab all the time, okay, leave them the same points. But if you want to take that backstab as well out of that, maybe drop them a point as well. And then you'd actually see them on the table. Like I drop them sometimes just because I think they're cool. But yeah, they could really use some help there. All right, so now we have worked all the way to my number 1 thing that wants to be changed, and you're probably thinking it's Buccaneers, right? Like, you're probably like, okay, Malorian, this is going to be your meme thing. You want Buccaneers to be changed. I'm just assuming they're being changed. I'm just assuming they're going from point cost 7 to 6 because they are not 7-point jacks. So I'm just assuming that one. For where my desires are and what I want to actually be seeing changed is actually for one of the most disappointing casters that going in, I was like, wow, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to play this all the time. To I have almost, man, have I ever played it? I don't know. Like if I have played it, it's been like once, but I think there's a good chance I have just never played it. And what that caster is Caine 3. Now, when Caine 3 was announced, I was a big time Caine 2, Caine 1 player. I loved playing those, did them all the time. You know, I think at that time, Caine 2 was my most played caster out of everything. But I was starting to get into mercenaries as well. And so when I learned that there was going to be a mercenary Cygnar caster that's also a Caine, I was like, yes, this is amazing. This is going to be so good. But then the rules came out and it was not so good. And the reason it was not so good was, one, it had like almost no warjack points. And the reasoning is that it has like two little friends, right? It's a unit. It comes with, you know, one person with like a ninja and one person that has like the guns. And it's like, okay, well, because you're getting these solos, those are worth points, so we're going to reduce it from you. So if you assume each of these solos was worth 4 points, I can kind of see where they got to the final warjack points. I think it only has like 20 or something, but either way, like they are not worth that, right? So the reason why they're there is, if you haven't seen Caine 3, is that Caine 3's feat is basically synergy for guns. So as your battle group shoots and hits up to a maximum of 3, you get +1 to hit and +1 damage. So the idea why you want these two little friends is that they shoot along with Caine, and then now once you get to your battle group models, you're already at the +3. So really, they're there to make the feat work the way it's supposed to work. So like if you're in one of those games where like your little buddies for Caine 3 died early, your feat is severely nerfed because you don't have a lot of battle group, right? There's not a lot of time in there to try and get these things better. And there was a huge difference between whether you ran Caine 3 in Cygnar as opposed to mercenaries, because in Cygnar, you have a lot of pretty cheap shooty jacks. I mean, you could do it with the hunters, but you could also do it with something like the Chargers, and the Chargers love that feat. Just like do so many shots for so cheap, does amazing work. But you have a lot of options. If you did Caine 3 with like, I could see it with like we almost got to like the Sentinel. The Sentinel could almost be in there too for things I want to see updated. But what I'm trying to get at is that there's a lot of cheap jacks that have reasonable guns that you could spam and try and do these things with. On the mercenary side, that is not the case. You're looking at expensive heavies, you know, that have like the Mariner and like, I don't know, like you could try and go with the Mule and like all these expensive ones where like you're really not getting the same value out of there. Like our cheap range ones, especially at the time, we got new ones after, but it was like the Buccaneer that does 0 damage. And I believe I even asked the question, like, if I do Caine 3's feat, does that mean that eventually they become PAL 3? And Hungerford's like, no, sorry, it just does not do damage. It's like, oh, you won't even give me that. So since then, we've had the other Buccaneer, other types that do have little guns, but they're garbage. And so you're not going to really use them with Caine. So that really just said like, hey, you know how you're excited for playing Caine in Mercenaries and Cygnar? Well, it's trash in Mercenaries, so forget it. And in Cygnar, well, because you're kind of down an entire jack, you're probably better off going with a Sloan or a Haley 1 or a Caine 1 when you're trying to do one of these gun lines. So Caine 3, sorry, you're out of here. Probably the only thing that you could have done in Mercenaries that was kind of interesting is you take it with 2 blockaders and then also the Menate Archon and do that, and Lealese. You could also get like the Choir in there too. And then because of that thing, what it does is D3 sprays. It's risky because it's D3, but synergy on those sprays can be kind of cool. Now you can't even do that because now they're spray 1 instead of D3. So it's really not worthwhile. So what are we going to be doing with this Caine 3 to actually make it work? Well, the first thing, which already Faye has said that this is going to be something that's going to be happening, is that those Warjack points are be going up. I don't know how much it's going to be going up. I would guess it's somewhere around 4, maybe even 5. It's going to be going back up because those solos, you know, like they're not 4-point solos. I don't know if you could argue that they're 3-point solos. They're somewhere between like a 2 and a 3 type thing for what they really bring as far as power to themselves to the table. Again, they help the feat, but your feet shouldn't be dependent that you have these 2 other little models that, again, have to hit, right? You could also, like, pop your feet and they just miss your shot because, you know, things are higher defense now. So that could be a real issue as well. So first of all, those points have to go up. I also feel there is something intrinsically wrong with the way that the feat works that is not then helping how it's being played on the table, right? That whole fact where like, hey, I want to be spamming things to be getting the most from this and I have to do this whole synergy thing, I really feel is not doing it justice, because then all of a sudden it's that big difference between the two. It wants you to spam and all that type of stuff. And I also want to take that importance away from those 2 models as well. So what I would do then for its feat is I would give it not the synergy thing. I would just be giving it a blanket +2. So not the full +3, the +2 to hit and the +2 damage. Now, the thing then is that you're competing with other shooty casters in Cygnar. So over there, when it looks like, oh, +2 to hit and +2 damage, that's probably not worth it. You could probably also do the +3 just standard. And again, that's why you're not saying Caine 3 over there, is because Sloan, Haley 1, Siege, these are just better ones for getting more damage out there. So I feel that there should be then something else there to try and also add to it. And what I think would be really cool is, again, I wouldn't go all the way to +3/+3. I would make it so that your jacks are +2/+2 to their range attacks and got dual attack. And then this then kind of brings in this interesting list where you maybe want things like your Mariners, which are going to charge in and do a thresher and then take a cannon shot and all this stuff. And it's kind of like more the way that like the Caine Force is probably supposed to operate. And more importantly, really differentiates it from the other things, right? When you're competing with the Sieges and the Sloans and the Haley 1s for a gun line, all your math goes into how it works as a gun line. As soon as you add dual attack, well, then all of a sudden these combat things can be working there as well. And I think it would make for a very, very interesting and dynamic force. And you'd be seeing Caine 3 on the tables again. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Please, again, I said that mine was supremely biased. I'm going with mainly my favorite stuff for the factions that I play. So if there's ones that you'd want to see, probably for the factions you play, let me down below. Like, say down there below, what are the ones that you want to see changed and how would you change them? I'd be really interested to know what your thoughts are. Otherwise, I want to be thanking my patrons again to make all this stuff possible. My overlords, Darrell Duncan and David Doucette. My content manipulators, Adrian, Andrew, Dorian, Jordan, Kieran, and Sloth Monarchy. Thank you all.